The 49ers are still reeling from the Ricky Pearsall shooting, but we are a week away from week one. The NFL doesn't stop. How do they respond to that? And does it affect anything else going on with the team? We'll dive into all of it next. What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Networks. I'm your host, Rob Stats Guerrera, alongside Vish Kumar. And Vish, it is a very weird time in 49ers land right now. Normally, we would be all pumped up. I would be talking about we're 7 days away from week one, and this is great, and the regular season's kicking off 4 days away. But looming over everything are the tragic events of what happened with Ricky Pearsall on Saturday. It's still hanging over the team, frankly, as you would expect. Fortunately, it seems like the best outcome has happened that could have happened given all these circumstances, but still, obviously, a huge, huge event days away from the start of week one.
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, I didn't know how to react to such a situation. I felt like so many people had a lot of reactions, and they had a lot of reactions that included telling other people how to react. Um, the only thing I could say for a situation like this, like you said, it's so different from anything you're accustomed to week one. Obviously, very tragic in the sense that you very unexpected. Nobody expected that to happen. And when it does happen, now obviously we have whatever's the best case scenario from such a tragic event happening, which is that it seems like Ricky Pearsall is going to make a full recovery, and it seems like it didn't do too much harm to his body, although we don't know to the extent ultimately what it does to him. I will say one last thing on the reaction and the direction I was going with that is, Rob, I've been fortunately in my life, I haven't dealt with too many shocking or tragic events that have forced an emotional reaction out of me. But what I do know is the few times I have dealt with this situation, oftentimes I couldn't tell you how I was going to react. It's a very natural emotional reaction to something like that happening or something going wrong. And so I find it difficult when people comment or people say, well, this is what they should have done. This is how they should have reacted. This is what human beings do. Because as a human being, when I'm in those moments, I don't feel like I can tell you or enunciate exactly what those feelings are. It's a very unique thing when you're stuck in these situations dealing with shocking news or a tragic situation. And so that was kind of the direction I was going with to start that. Obviously, the best case scenario, like you started it up for Ricky Pearsall, and that's the most important thing here, that he's going to be healthy. But I wanted to also go in that direction of, hey, like, I don't necessarily know how people should or shouldn't react, other than the fact that this is a very difficult situation for them to go through in general.
My reaction, so I had a little different reaction than I think a lot of Niners content creators, because I think of my experience. For anyone that doesn't know, a lot of people are just joining for the first time. I worked at ESPN on Mike and Mike in the Morning for 7 years on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. I also produced Pro Football Talk Live at NBC Sports for 7 years with Mike Florio and Chris Sims. So I have had a front row seat to see how two of the biggest media companies on the planet handle breaking news. And I can tell you, overwhelmingly, the first reaction is to wait. Even though you want to be first, it's to wait and wait for facts to come in, because stuff is flying, especially now on Twitter. Like I started doing shows before Twitter was a thing, so I've seen it change. Yeah, I know I'm old. I've seen it change as we've gone along here, but the overwhelming reaction is wait for the facts to come out, because so much information comes out and it's partial or it's incomplete, or and I'm not saying it's people lying. Some people are just flat out lying, which is terrible. But a lot of information, case in point, Grant Cohn. And I talked about this earlier today. And if I wasn't clear, I want to make sure I am clear. Grant was DMing with a San Francisco police officer who was giving him information. The information was like 98% accurate. There was just a slight inaccuracy with like the number of wounds or shots, or it was just a little off. Now, I'm not saying that Grant is a bad person for putting the information that he was receiving from a San Francisco police officer out there. I'm not saying that at all. And if that was the impression you got from my earlier stream, then that's on me for not being clear enough. My only point for when I talked about why I didn't hop on was because it's so hard to get the full and complete story. And I certainly didn't have sources better than that. I didn't have sources on the San Francisco police force. So I wasn't going to contribute and just read things off of Twitter or read things from other people's sources without having anything directly. So that's why I waited. I'm not saying that anybody purposely put out incorrect information. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that's why I waited. So if I wasn't clear earlier in the day, that's on me. But my instinct is to wait because of sort of the training that I've had. So I didn't go live on it until earlier this afternoon because I wanted a more complete picture. And I think we got that now. There's a lot of details that are out now that are frankly unbelievable when you hear them.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm so glad you said that. And I don't want to criticize anybody else for what they did, but I'm just gonna go over why I think the reaction of waiting is important for this one. I think oftentimes this is where you kind of cross the fine line of now we're dealing with reporting on someone's livelihood instead of reporting on what they're doing for their job, right? Like you
You
can
mean
incorrectly report something.
their life, their livelihood is
Life. I meant not. Did I say livelihood? Well, okay, yeah. I basically said the same sentence twice.
yes, but I know
Funny.
what
Yeah, right.
you do mean we're talking about somebody's life, not their
We're
job.
talking about somebody's life versus their job. That's my funny sentences back to back aside. We're talking about somebody's life versus somebody's job. When you make a mistake on Ricky Pearsall, the number of catches he has in a game, something like that, maybe you're affecting his bottom line a little bit, but that's okay. Something like this, you get really one shot to talk about because it's a tragic event and it's a life changing event for him. It's a life changing event for his family, and it's a life changing event for the 49ers. And I didn't hear Grant's exact report, so I'm not going to talk about that. I didn't hear that one, but I will just say I appreciate your reaction of waiting because I agree with you. This is one where even as you see it coming in and it's really shocking, you got to know as much as you can before you just go out and talk about it because again, it's a lot different than talking about football stats. You're talking about his life now.
And Grant had information, right? He had a source in the police department. So if he I understand that's different from what I would have done, which is just me going on Twitter and reading things that I see on Twitter from other people. That's different. I didn't want to do that because that doesn't me going on and reading other people's stuff doesn't add any value, and it certainly doesn't add any clarity to the situation. Now, if I had information from somebody that I was able to verify with two sources and all that stuff, that's a totally different story. I didn't have that, and I wasn't going to have that. So that's why I wanted to wait on everything. Chris Waddell, thank you for the super chat, says few things. Ricky must be a tough SOB. Fish that had his fire. Stats, you and Theo Vaughn have the same mic tick. Also on the Michelle show, you sounded like you had inside knowledge about Trent. Spill the beans, please.
Ooh.
Okay, I don't know what the mic tick is. I do grab the mic and move it around. Maybe that's it. Also, I don't know who Theo Vaughn is. Should I know who Theo Vaughn is?
Yeah, of course you should know the comedian.
I don't know who that is.
All right, that's homework for you for next week.
All
Find out who Theo Vaughn is.
I really did think that Trent was going to be done by tonight. Really. Now, this was before, obviously, everything with Pearsall happened. I really thought it was going to get done. I had been kind of sniffing around and poking around and kind of seeing what I could find out. And so now this, look, this is a life event that changes everything. And I would imagine that, a lot of things kind of stopped once this went down. But I did think that was going to happen. Look, Bosa signed 4 days before week 1. Maybe that's where Trent's going to be too.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, Rob. I was in the same boat, and I kind of expected us to do this show from the guise of, hey, Trent Williams is signed, and it looks like he's coming back to start this upcoming week of practice, getting ready for Monday night versus Aaron Rodgers. Again, obviously, this is a total life event that definitely probably changed that timeline. I'm sure maybe there were some expectations of John Lynch and Jed York to be with Ricky Pearsall and deal with the aftermath of this event instead of maybe focusing on finalizing whatever contract details there are with Trent Williams. But I'm with you. I've not been too worried about Trent Williams returning because I've never felt like the 49ers have felt too worried about Trent Williams coming back. It feels like something that they both know that they need to accomplish before the end of the season, and they eventually will get to it. Now, obviously, this has been delayed maybe a little bit more than expected, but I expected them to probably have him signed by maybe tomorrow this time, day after tomorrow.
I really hope so. And I don't know. And by the way, Chris Waddell says Theo Vaughn constantly adjusts his mic all show. Yeah, sorry, I do that because I'm always moving my head and stuff. Like I don't know. I in the business when I was working at a radio station, we used to call it eat the mic. You always want to be super close to the mic. I never want to sound back here like I'm off mic. So I always try to keep it close. And since I'm always moving my head, I always adjust it. But anyway, do you think that the Pearsall situation changes things? Like, does it? Because the Niners have had so much drama, right? This Trent Williams drama, the Aiyuk drama, all that stuff. Do you think it maybe sort of resets things and everybody's like, whoa, like we just got a huge dose of perspective with what could have happened with Ricky Pearsall? You know, maybe we're too caught up worrying about crap that really it does not matter. And I don't know. And I don't want to say that they need to use this to do that because that sounds slimy and dirty. And that's not what I mean. But do you think it'll affect anything?
Honestly, it's hard to tell because I feel like with stuff like this, it can be an emotional lightning rod for a team, or maybe it's just an event that happened to happen and it doesn't affect their bottom lines and how they go about doing the job. The only people that can answer the question is the 53 people on the 49ers. Now, what I will say, Rob, is what I've said this entire offseason when this kind of topic has come up. I don't really think this quote unquote drama that they've dealt with is really going to affect what they do on the field starting week 1 against the Jets, because I think they've dealt with worse drama coming into this year. No matter how bad it got bad with Brandon Aiyuk, it was nowhere as close as the Trey Lance stuff with Sam Darnold last year or the Jimmy G Trey Lance stuff the year before. That stuff was way worse in terms of drama, in my opinion. And they seem to deal with that on the field totally fine. And so I don't expect drama to affect this team, but there is a big depth question mark, honestly, with this team coming into week 1. Like, their defensive line is coming into week 1 kind of banged up, and that's never a good sign, especially because this is probably the not the most shallow defensive line. I mean, we talk about the deepest defensive line is shallow, the way we would describe it. This is the most shallow defensive line the 49ers have had it for a while under Kyle Shanahan, keeping 8 defensive linemen only, or 9. Maybe did they keep 9 or 8?
Well, there's been some shuffling lately, so let me just double check off the top of my head.
But the original 53, I think, kept 8, which was the lowest. This is a team that's kept 10 defensive linemen year after year after year. They've wanted to be deep at that position. And so it's stuff like that that concerns me more. Bottom line, Rob, it's the injuries. It's them being less deep at defensive line. These are the things that concern me coming into this season. I'm not too into the drama because I've seen this team handle drama with flying colors the past few years, and I don't really expect that to affect them. I think they're all professionals. That's the one thing that's been consistent under Kyle Shanahan. I don't think it gets enough credit, honestly, because for all the things we do talk about Shanahan, he's very professional and his team is very professional.
Shanahan is definitely capable of compartmentalizing, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your point is well taken. The concrete issues with this team can affect it way more than the drama, than the intangible sort of issues. I totally agree with that. Warlock says, medically, can they cut Ricky and recover that money they signed him for? I don't see him playing at all this year or next, too injury prone. I don't know the answer to that. He's not getting cut. That's not a thing that's going to happen. I've been trying to research this, and I don't mean to sound crass when I say this. I was trying to figure out, like, what is the recovery time for this type of injury? Because obviously it's a rare thing. NFL players, you know, in the history of the NFL, I can only think of one other guy two other guys that have gotten shot, frankly. And the way that this turned out with it missing all the vital organs, with Pearsall not needing surgery, right? Like, the bullet could have hit his collarbone, which could have shattered and sent like bone fragments all throughout his chest, you know, like, which could have punctured lung. Like, there could have been massive, massive damage. For him to not need surgery is unbelievably lucky. But I don't know what the recovery time for that is. I have no idea.
Yeah, one, I don't know that this freak accident has anything to do with whether or not he's injury prone. He
Right.
seemed to have a shoulder issue that maybe didn't get fixed as quickly as intended. That seems to be the biggest issue, right? They were aware of his shoulder issue. They didn't expect him to have to deal with it twice. And
Mhm.
that's really what was unexpected with this shoulder. We'll see. That's a wait and see. Now, in terms of him and his career, I was excited for him to string together some level of healthy practices so we would get a real look at him and we'll get to see what the 49ers have. I feel like there's been a lot of strong opinions about him this offseason that I don't know have necessarily been fair given the level of context that we've had. And I was genuinely hoping, hey, he gets healthy for a few practices this offseason and he gets to contribute because again, I liked the draft pick, Rob. I still think he's a talented player. I think he was worthy in a lot of ways of the 31st pick. I don't think that conversation has fully been had. And I feel like one side has really provided evidence that he wasn't worthy of it and he hasn't been able to prove them wrong yet. Now, this entire thing, Rob, makes me confused on what the outlook is for his season because there's a mental aspect of dealing with whatever happened on that event that he's going to have to go through. And I cannot project how that affects him as a human being. And that's something that we can't project at all now going forward in his career because this could be something that, hey, he puts behind him and he continues going forward. Or this is something that might be so traumatic that it affects him. And that has nothing to do with who he is as a person. It has everything to do with dealing with a difficult situation and trauma like this, which I can't speak to.
Yes, there was a great article in the San Francisco Chronicle, which I put in today's 49ers in 5, which you can go check out. It's in the description. But it mentions right at the end of the article, there's a mental component to this, that people that suffer from gun violence have a mental hurdle, almost like PTSD. There's a mental part of that. And I mean, I got to imagine that you are just replaying this over and over in your head. I mean, what a terrible, traumatic situation. So there's all of that to think of. And Sign Me 29 on Twitch says taking a bullet makes you injury prone. Exactly. We're all injury prone when we get shot. Okay. Like
Yeah.
let's easy with that kind of comment. But yeah, so there's a physical and a mental recovery that has to go along with this. I wouldn't be surprised at any outcome. If you told me that he was placed on the non-football injury list, so he's going to miss at least 4 games. If you told me that he was back after that, I could believe it. If you told me he wasn't going to play this whole year, I would believe it and not be shocked at all. Like I'm fully open to the entire range of possible outcomes with Ricky Pearsall.
Me too. And I'm kind of open to the entire range of possible outcomes with this year, honestly. If you told me this was something that kind of just lingered over his season and he didn't really contribute, I could believe it. If you told me it, sparked something and he bounced back and came back with a vengeance in week 4, week 5 and was pretty good as a rookie, I could believe it. There's a lot of possible outcomes that I feel like I'm open to right now with Ricky Pearsall. The number one thing we do know is, hey, this guy got pretty lucky in terms of not what happened to him, but in terms of the results of everything that did happen. And
Well,
he's going to be okay, which is good.
yeah, I mean, lucky one with the bullet and the trajectory of the bullet and what was missed, and also that a police officer was basically about a minute away after the incident took place and was able to get to him and apply pressure to the wounds and call an ambulance and all of that stuff. The whole thing is unbelievable. And we are very, very lucky that Ricky Pearsall is not dead, frankly. He literally asked the police officer, am I going to die? That's the situation that they were in. Like it's scary, scary stuff. So there's that aspect of it. The other aspect of it, Vish, that was a big topic was the 49ers response. Obviously, we know Pearsall was in the hospital Saturday. We know that John Lynch went to the hospital. That I think Matt Mayoko reported that. We know there were other members of the 49ers organization that were there. Now, concurrently, the 49ers have their 53-man roster party that they have every year at the end of training camp that was already planned. It was going on, and I believe it was at Kyle Shanahan's house. The party, again, I think, according to Mayoko, went on as scheduled. What we don't know is whether Kyle Shanahan went to the hospital, whether he didn't, what communication he had with Ricky Pearsall, whether Ricky Pearsall said, hey, don't come. I'm okay. Everything is good. Tell people not to come. I don't know. There are rumors online of a FaceTime call that took place. I don't think we can judge Kyle Shanahan until we have more information. I think we need more information. I don't know that we'll ever get it, but I couldn't sit here and say on Saturday night that Kyle Shanahan was terrible and he completely responded the wrong way, because I don't know how he responded, frankly.
Thank you. And I think that's the correct answer. And that's why I'm going to do a complete reframe of Saturday night. And I'm going to take the exact events as happened and present them to you in a very different way from how some of the 49ers media have presented it. And you can see how the facts look, right? I'm going to say Kyle Shanahan showed great leadership on Saturday night because he had a team get together. He got the rest of the players together, and being together in that moment with his players and explaining, hey, this is what happened, to me, that shows great leadership. Now, do I really know that it shows great leadership? Absolutely not. Like you said, I have no idea the power of his actual reaction to his team or whatever. It's just a case of, hey, I could represent the same facts and present to you in this way, and all of a sudden it can look like a positive on Kyle Shanahan's leadership in that situation. The point is, again, two things. One is, we established at the top of the show, I don't exactly know what the correct reaction was. Only the 52 people that are Ricky Pearsall's teammates know what Kyle Shanahan needed to do in that situation to help them go through whatever happened. And whatever, for those 52 people, Rob, that party and however it went down could have been exactly what they needed in that moment. I don't know, frankly, and those are the only 52 people that really matter to Kyle Shanahan and his leadership in this particular case.
And I think part of why some people were upset is because of pictures like this that were floating online. If you're watching the stream, you could see it. Kyle's in a cream colored suit. Very nice. He's got the nice footwear too. I just noticed that for the first time.
Yeah, he was dripped out.
Back. Yeah, it was a party, right? Like, he's dressed up for the party, whatever. Maybe the players get a kick out of seeing him dressed up, whatever. So, but like, I don't even know when this picture was taken. Was that before he even found out about Ricky Pearsall? Like, I have no idea. But I think what happened was nobody said specifically that Kyle Shanahan went to the hospital or even had any contact with Ricky Pearsall. And then people saw this picture and they reacted. They assumed that he didn't, and then he was just partying the night away and like not, talking to the team about Ricky or thinking about Ricky or anything. And we don't have enough information to be able to make that call. And I crush Shanahan when I think he makes a mistake. I can't do that. I can't.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, even these pictures and all of it, like you said, maybe that's what the team needed. Maybe vibes were down and they needed a laugh from, hey, Kyle is like this because, hey, Ricky's going to be okay. I don't know, Rob. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It comes down to what you said. This could be a lightning rod moment for this team. You don't want something like this to be. But if Shanahan reacted in a way that his team won't forgive, we'll find out this season, right? We'll find out at some point if they have a terrible season that people were pissed off on how he handled this particular situation, because it is a large life event that he had to handle as a leader. But that's not for us to judge based on a couple pictures that we see online. That's for Ricky Pearsall and his 52 teammates to decide. And we'll find out ultimately how they felt on how their leader reacted to this situation. But I will say, I feel like some of this stuff on like taking the picture and not saying he's reacting in a human way is like totally harsh. Because like we talked about at the top of the show, a lot of these things, we don't know how we're going to ultimately end up reacting in those situations. Like, there's not a logical part of our brain that goes on when we deal with these emotional situations. We deal with just releasing emotion. And so it's really easy when we're able to think clearly and think through, this is what happened to Ricky Pearsall, say those are the exact emotions that need to trigger then, but we're detached from the situation. We're able to think about it. They're not detached from it. And I think it's really harsh to start saying, oh, this was an incorrect human reaction, or this is how human beings shouldn't react, or get on Shanahan for stuff like that. Because now we're going beyond football. Now we're going up beyond attacking a person for their coaching or their leadership. We're attacking the character of a human being, and we're basically attacking his ability to empathize to a critical situation that happened to another human being. That's probably as low as you can attack a person. I hate that stuff.
And I don't know Kyle Shanahan. I've met him, but I don't know, him as a person in any way. I have a rule on the show that I would never say anything on the show that I wouldn't say to somebody's face. And I criticize Kyle's professional performance. Yeah, that's the job. That's the business I'm in. But I'm not going to criticize this personal situation like that. Chris Waddell says, if I had to speculate, Kyle had 53 players scheduled to come to his house, caterers, drinks, etc. Guarantee he kept the party as is to address everyone together instead of leaving his wife and staff to do everything. That's why Lynch left alone. I don't know. And thank you very much for the donation, Chris. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that. We don't have enough information. I know it sounds like a cop-out. I'm not trying to cop out. Harris says he's not a bad person, but it's not the best look. But that's the thing. We don't even know that it's not the best look. We don't know when those photos were taken. We don't know what he said to the team. We don't know anything. All we know is that there was a party. He was wearing the suit and photos emerged on social media. That's it, right? Like, we'll find out tomorrow. There'll be an open locker room. I'm sure the players are going to get asked about this. How did you find out? What was your reaction? Were you at the party? What did Kyle say? What did Kyle do? Did you FaceTime with Ricky Pearsall? Like, what if Shanahan FaceTime with Pearsall from the hospital, right? And he had the whole team behind him and they were all watching the call, right? And maybe they all checked in and they wished Ricky well. And Ricky said, guys, have the party. I'm okay. I'll be back. I'm going to heal up. Don't worry about it. Like, that is a very realistic thing that could have happened. And so we don't know.
Right. Or before that, they had everybody over at the house and everybody was just sitting together, just feeling everybody's presence, dealing with the emotions of going through a teammate, going through whatever Ricky Pearsall went through. And I said going through, went through like 4 times in that sentence, but I can't figure out the accurate words to describe those emotions of what the 49ers and Ricky Pearsall went through. And ultimately, that's where I think it's completely unfair to take one picture, because they might have taken that, like, he might have paid Rick Ross a hell of a lot of money to come to his house. And because of that, Rick Ross needed a couple of pictures to make it look like, hey, I partied with the 49ers. The entire party's mood could have been somber. Now, I'm projecting, I'm creating a lot of story on what could have happened, what couldn't have happened, but that's the point. Everybody is speculating on what those reactions were, and they're deciding based on speculation whether a human being reacted to a human situation correctly, which I think is a level of unfair in terms of criticizing someone that's holding someone to a standard that's like unheard of. I hate it, honestly. I think it's one of the worst things you can do, because we're dealing with a situation that's way beyond football and we're attacking somebody's human reaction to that.
I completely agree with you. I think we've stated it accurately. We've stated our positions. You may agree, disagree. I'm sure we'll have more to say once we find out more information after the open locker room tomorrow, and we can talk about that and have those reactions as our information changes. Now, let's talk about Brandon Aiyuk, Vish, because I haven't had the chance to talk to you about it. Obviously, the deal is done. $47 million fully guaranteed for Brandon Aiyuk, which is much more than Amon-Ra St. Brown got, even though they both got 4 years and $120 million. I don't know about you. I feel like this is typical 49ers. They stomp their feet, they hold their breath, but in the end, they end up paying a hell of a lot of money, and all they've really done is tick people off inside the locker room.
Yeah, I didn't really understand this one. Now there's a timeline, obviously, of events that projects that, hey, Brandon Aiyuk was given this deal August 12th, and he's the one who delayed the signing. Maybe that's true, but we also know that TJ Houshmandzadeh, his coach, receivers coach, and we talked about it on this show, said that the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal, which Brandon Aiyuk got more than, by the way, essentially gets this deal done in June.
If they want to be a sign, give him the Amon-Ra deal. Give it to him. Okay. And guarantee he'll be in there tomorrow.
There it was.
Right? And so given those two things, I feel like, I think they thought they were going to get Aiyuk for a smaller number. And I think they realized sometime in August that, hey, either we're going to have to shoot ourselves in the foot completely and trade him, which would have been stupid no matter what. Trading him in August was just a bad move. Or they were going to have to acquiesce to his number. And it seems like they ended up doing that. And I think that Brandon Aiyuk took a lot of criticism because people were saying his number was unreasonable coming into this point this offseason. But it looks like he was never asking for Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb money. It was never reported that he was asking for that, though people were saying he was asking for obscene amount of money. He was asking for Amon-Ra St. Brown money, which I would say he's as good as Amon-Ra St. Brown, if not better. I think he's a little bit better than Amon-Ra St. Brown, especially because he's better on the outside than Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I think that's more important, honestly. than having a good slot guy. I'd rather have a good outside guy. And so given that, he got essentially, I feel like, what he was looking for.
And more power to him. Good for him. He deserves it. The 49ers, they have to evolve. They have to. Jeremy Fowler went on NFL Live on Friday and said that essentially, Trent Williams is mad at the 49ers for dragging their feet, for letting it get to this situation where he has no guaranteed money left in his contract, for letting him get to the fourth highest paid left tackle. And the interesting quote that Fowler threw in at the end is he's going to make them wait a little longer, is literally what he said. So I think, yeah, there are some hurt feelings. There's some hurt. The 49ers front office is probably hurt. Tim Kawakami tweeted out that the Niners were a little sore after getting taken to the cleaners by Nick Bosa. So they were trying to win with Brandon Aiyuk. Guess what? They didn't. And so now here we are with Trent Williams. And it's like they haven't learned from any of this.
Yeah, 100%. And Trent Williams is a guy you don't want to mess with because he's a guy who stood on principle and sat out an NFL season because he didn't want to play in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is not a guy that, says something and doesn't do it. He stands 10 toes down on his business. This is a guy that seems to have made a lot of money in the NFL and has preserved a lot of money in the NFL. So he seems to be okay sitting and waiting and paying whatever fines that he has to pay. And so when you're dealing with all of that, I do agree it is a little bit of a tenuous situation. The one thing I will say also is I was wrong. Earlier this offseason, when we had this conversation, I thought Brandon Aiyuk had no leverage. I thought the 49ers were beating him up in the negotiation. I thought the stuff he was doing in social media was dumb. Now, I still will stand on some of that. I thought what he did on social media was extremely stupid. I thought it was some of the worst marketing I've ever seen in my life. But I was totally wrong. Brandon Aiyuk found leverage in a situation where I didn't think he had leverage, and he found a way to manipulate the situation to get the exact deal he wanted. Credit to him, credit to his agent. I was wrong about that. I thought the 49ers had a stranglehold of the situation. I really thought they would be able to force him to play on his fifth-year option when they needed to, and I was totally wrong about that.
Well, you were wrong about that, and so was I, in that the 49ers did not use all the leverage that they had, right? If the Niners wanted to use everything in their toolbox, he wouldn't have a new contract right now. He would either be playing on the fifth-year option or he would be sitting out. They didn't want to take it to that level. That's the thing. I think I was wrong. Again, I'm saying I was wrong in that I thought the 49ers would be willing to take it to that level, and they clearly weren't. And so I was wrong about that. They cut their own leverage sort of out from underneath them, and Aiyuk used it to his advantage, and good for him.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
So I know people think that I don't ever say that I was wrong. So I want to make sure I get that, on the record.
Yeah, you don't say it enough, to be honest.
All right, well, that's really neither here. That's probably a little excessive, frankly. Let's back it off just a little bit.
You sipping a Heineken Zero over there?
No, it's a Stella. I love me some Stella. I'm a big fan.
Okay, old man.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that a Niners Nation thing? Because Kyle Posey, when I met him in Chicago a couple years back, he also likes drinking Stellas. Weird fact, but
no, it turns out it's a good beer. Imagine that. We both like good beer.
Oh, okay. Now you've got the acquired taste, huh?
See, Andre says Stella is a good beer.
Okay, that's 3.
Here's the thing, though, Vish. We can, the 49ers have seemingly made the same mistake in negotiations over and over and over again, but now they have their most important one coming up, which is Brock Purdy after the year, assuming he doesn't get hurt and assuming he plays to a level that they find acceptable that they want to keep around, right? You can't have your quarterback not signed a week before the season starts. Like, you have to get that done. So if the 49ers continue to do what they have done, which is kind of slow play this and lowball people and drag this out, they're going to put themselves in a situation where they're going to impact the 2025 team.
Yeah, I don't know that the Brock Purdy one would get to this point. I guess I'm looking at the Brock Purdy negotiation in a little bit of a different way, Stats. And it was something I brought up when they were trying to sign Nick Bosa a couple years ago, right? Like, the 49ers are accustomed to giving certain type of deals. That's why the Fred Warner deal, for example, was a little less contentious than the other ones, because they had given that style contract to Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis, the top middle linebacker in the NFL, that style contract. The Trent Williams one, the Nick Bosa one, that one's a little different. When you're paying the top defensive player in the NFL, the most guaranteed non-quarterback money in NFL history, the top left tackle contract, like Jed York is forking over a different amount of guaranteed money for those deals. And I think it created some sort of tension with that. Now, obviously, the quarterback deal is different, but they've done the quarterback deal before, and they've done it in a specific style when they did it with Colin Kaepernick and Jimmy Garoppolo, excuse me. And that's what I'm interested when it comes to Brock Purdy, because we can have so many different conversations on what we think Brock Purdy is, what we think the 49ers think Brock Purdy is, but the proof is going to be in the pudding with that contract. If they give him money the way they gave Colin Kaepernick, highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and Jimmy Garoppolo, highest paid quarterback in the NFL, but the contract is incentivized with 8 different outs in the first 3-4 years, tells you what they think of Brock Purdy. But if they give him the style of contract that Nick Bosa got, the style of contract Trent Williams got, the style of contract that Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, these types of guys are getting, and I question how they'll do that negotiation, because that one's not accustomed to them, and that one, like you said, now brings us to the situation of the question you presented. Then they truly believe he's that kind of guy, because they're taking the full-on financial risk with him. And so that's really what I want to go ahead. Sorry.
No, I thought you were done. I apologize.
No, I pretty much was. Yeah.
What do we always say? What they do matters way more than what they say. So you're right. The feelings will be revealed. Colin Kaepernick's contract was unlike any quarterback contract I have ever seen. If he didn't make Pro Bowls and All Pros, he had to give money back. It wasn't an incentive that you get money if you make it. It was, if you don't, you give money back. I've never seen that before in any other kind of contract. The 49ers must have been like, wait, you want to do what? Like, it was the most team-friendly quarterback deal I think I've ever seen.
I think where they were able to get both of those guys is, if you want to get to the point where you can put the label of highest paid player on this contract, then these are the things that you need to do to get there. And I feel like they were able to negotiate that with those two guys. Now, Purdy, at the point of his contract, Kaepernick, had 2 NFC championship games as well at the point that he came to negotiate his contract. Purdy already has that. He has half a season and then a season, just as Kaepernick did. And now he's going to have one more in his belt. Garoppolo had 5 games and didn't seem to have the backing fully of Shanahan, though he had the fan base behind him. So Purdy is in the driver's seat from a negotiation standpoint that both of those guys never were. And we think he's playing better football. He's younger than those guys were coming. There's a lot of other variables in it. I just throw it out there because, Rob, I think that's going to be our most telling detail on what the Niners think of Brock Purdy. And it's interesting to me with the Aiyuk deal, with how front-loaded it is, and he is making quite a bit of money in terms of guarantees early in that contract. I question if Jed York, if this year giving this Aiyuk deal, they were obsessed with guaranteed money, according to Tim Kawakami, I question if he's going to be able to come back and do the same thing for Brock Purdy a year from now, because that's going to be guaranteed money unlike anything he's forked over in the case that things go as we're predicting.
And if you think that Brock Purdy is going to take less money than a market rate contract, I think you are out of your mind. Yeah. I think there is no way his average per year doesn't start with a 5 or a 6.
100%. Dude, Brady didn't take a discount on his first contract. This is his first chance to make real big money. He's not going to do it.
Yeah, I agree. People think that, he's all shucks, nice guy. His agent's going to be like, this dude's been the biggest bargain in the league for 3 years. Not only do you got to pay us market rate, you got to make up for the money that you didn't pay us when you couldn't because of the CBA.
Look, and it's way more important than just being highest paid, is way more important than just like, oh, he's the highest paid. It's about resetting the market for your fellow quarterbacks. It's about branding. The branding around highest paid quarterback, that's its own branding. That's something you can sell. Being the highest paid player in the NFL at a certain point is something you can sell. It's his opportunity for his agent to put that he's negotiated the biggest contract in NFL history. He's not going to let that opportunity go. There's so many hands that need that contract along with Brock Purdy himself. I don't know. I don't get why people think he's going to be some saint giving back money. And in fact, What I hate about that conversation, Rob, is that we're almost setting up the conversation to be he's a bad guy if he doesn't give that money back. Because everybody's already saying, oh, Purdy's such a nice guy. Purdy is such a good guy. Purdy doesn't need to be paid like that. That is total bullshit. There's nothing about being nice or being mean that has to do with wanting to get your money. That's about principle. And I hate how that conversation is already being framed. And he will be an excellent guy and a nice guy if he takes every penny he deserves next offseason, no matter what.
And you mentioned something that I think should not be overlooked too. The agents are in this for themselves as much as the player, because the contract speaks to what the agent can do for you, and what a feather in the cap of Brock Purdy's agent would it be for him to say, I took the last pick in the draft and made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And that's part of it, because every contract is like an advertisement for the agent to attract other clients in the league, to get players who may be represented by one guy who maybe aren't happy with their representation to leave them and come to you. It's a very, very, I don't want to say slimy, but it's a fluid business. You're always trying to attract new clients and get that part of it out there. And the contracts are the agent's commercials, essentially, because everybody in the NFL knows everybody else's contract. I'll never forget working on a show at ESPN Radio, which was Ryan Russillo and Jamal Mashburn. And Jamal Mashburn was like, you don't understand. NBA players know everybody else's salary, and they all do it. And so Ryan would just randomly throw out guys, and Jamal would be like, oh, he's making $15 million. He's making $25 million. Like, they all pay attention. So the eyes are going to be on Brock Purdy and the 49ers when this contract negotiation can actually start.
And right as you went to it, I think the NFL is going to want that story too. Brock Purdy's story, going from where he came from, Mr. Irrelevant, to highest paid player in the NFL. The NFL loves that stuff. This is what they live for. This is what they live to sell. This is what people eat up. They don't want from Mr. Irrelevant to one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. That's not a good headline.
Right. Just think of the draft commercial, right? Especially for day 2 of the NFL draft when they're trying to get you to watch Brock Purdy. Oh, Brock Purdy just signed a contract to become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Like, yes, totally. They want that 100%. Werlock says, if Purdy continues to struggle in the rain and loses in the wild card round, would you give him $55 million? He's good, not great, not a game changer. It's a fair question. I do. That's why I say I want to see the season play out. I wouldn't be that mad if we got to see a few more rain games from Brock Purdy. I would like to see that, because I do think that's a thing right now. I think that's a legitimate criticism of him. It's interesting. What if Jed said to Kyle and John, Vish, and this is tinfoil hat. Let me just put it on here. What if Jed said to Kyle, you want me to pay this money for Aiyuk? Well, then you better find a replacement for Brock, because I'm not paying $65 million for that. Find another guy that can do it if you want me to pay this to Aiyuk. Or,
Crazy.
I mean, is it totally conspiracy tinfoil on my head guy?
No, I don't think it's that. I just think it would be a crazy statement for the owner to make, because I feel like there's still so much to find out about Brock Purdy, in the sense that, like, okay, right now, Rob, to me, he's not a guy I would want to pay $55 million. But that's right now off of him playing one season as a full-time starter, and he didn't even get the full offseason for that season. So it wasn't even the full reins of what he could possibly be or do. It was what I think is his best football so far. And that's where I think this season gives us a great opportunity. And I think it's very dangerous to make the statement I just made, like, oh, I wouldn't pay him, because I feel like this season it can completely change our mind and do a 180 on that. And I think he's already very close to that level of, when I say, oh, I wouldn't pay him $55 million, it's not like, oh, I wouldn't pay him at all. It's just that I'm like pulling hairs on the threshold between that level of guy and where he is right now. He's very close to that. He is one season a little bit better than last year away from being exactly that guy that you would want to pay $55 million to. And so therefore, I feel like it's very dangerous to make any sort of statement in regard to his money right now, because shoot, Rob, he could blow. He has the ability to blow $55 million out of the water too, if things go really, really well with how he plays next year.
Sure. What if he Flacco's and they win the Super Bowl? Right?
There you go.
Like, let's say, for example, Dak Prescott doesn't reach a contract with the Cowboys. So he goes into the offseason a full-fledged unrestricted free agent where everybody.
Oh, he's going to blow the market out of the water.
He's going to completely reset the market. So then, especially with the way the 49ers negotiate and dragging their feet, if they're trying to deal with Brock after that, and the 49ers win the Super Bowl too, if you put that on top of it, they're going to have to go nuts with the contract. Absolutely nuts. And, Joe Flacco won the Super Bowl in 2012, as we're all very painfully aware. He got a ridiculous deal. Well, Brock Purdy has been light years ahead of
Eli before that too. Remember, Eli's elite.
Right. Yeah, that whole thing. So, I mean, there is a very real universe that we could be living in where you're going to have to go absolutely nuts if you want to re-sign Brock Purdy. Now, if the 49ers win the Super Bowl, you may say, who cares? Do it, whatever. Like, oh no, what a terrible problem. The 49ers won the Super Bowl. So, like, I totally get that. But we're just saying, if you think that Brock is not worth $50 million, like, you better wake up to the very real possibility that he's going to be worth a hell of a lot more than that, because that will be the market rate. Antonio, YouTube channel member, says, I find it ridiculous when fans expect players to take less money, as if the amount of money you make is a litmus test for your character. It's gross and manipulative. 100%.
Yeah, there you go. 100% agree. And by the way, this comment to me is, oh, geez, Levin, come on, man. I thought we were friends.
Levin says,
I thought we had this thing where we hate on Rob together.
Stop that. Levin says even Vicious hats are devoid of any color. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah. And then I see this comment where third string All-Pro says Brock will win MVP. If he wins MVP, are you kidding in terms of what he's going to get paid? Herbert, Burrow, Allen, none of these guys won MVP. And they got that bag. Same with Dak, all of these guys. If he wins an MVP, are you kidding me?
Sign Me 29 says, once again, Levin stealing takes from Twitch. I wouldn't put it past Levin, let's be honest. Yeah, no, the contract, and I know like we're getting ahead of ourselves, right? They haven't even kicked off week 1 of this season and all of that stuff. But when we're sitting here a week from the game and Trent Williams hasn't signed and we're talking about the team's negotiating style, all this stuff goes into the stew, right? When we're trying to figure out what could and would and will happen. So yeah, this season is so fascinating for this team on so many levels, because you have the whole like climbing the mountaintop again, right? If you fail to win a Super Bowl this year, you go down as one of the all-time best teams to never win a Super Bowl. It's NFL infamy if you fail to win a Super Bowl this year. You have that. You have the whole Brock situation. Then you have the whole breaking up of the team because Debo is probably gone this year. Trent could retire after the year. Who the hell knows if he doesn't retire this year before the year starts? Kittle could be gone. There are so many tentacles that could just spread out based on this season. It's going to be one of the most interesting 49ers seasons of all time.
100%, 100%. And I don't use yards per attempt and passer rating as my measures of whether a quarterback is playing well. Those are the measures that people use to say Garoppolo was having great seasons. So I watch quarterbacks.
Yeah, let's not go there. Stephen Duckett, YouTube channel member for 16 months. Shout out to you, Stephen. Thank you. Brock, season MVP and Super Bowl MVP. Correct me if I'm wrong, but an MVP has not won the Super Bowl since, I think, Kurt Warner, right? I might be wrong. Maybe Brady pulled it off because he seems to have every friggin' record. But I know it's been a long time.
There was a long streak where Cam was MVP and he lost. Matt Ryan was MVP and then he lost. Brady was MVP and then he lost to Nick Foles. I'm trying to think. Maybe Mahomes did it. Yeah, Mahomes did it 2 years or a year ago.
Of course,
versus the Eagles. Yeah.
Why not? Like, but man,
I think it was a while before it hadn't been done though, till Mahomes.
Yeah, it had been a long time for sure. I don't.
He's insane.
Mahomes. Yeah, I know it's ridiculous. But I will say this too, and this is not to slight Patrick Mahomes. Part of the reason we think he is so insane is because he has beaten the 49ers twice, right? Like, let's say they split. Let's say the 49ers won in 2019. They were able to maintain that lead. Jimmy Garoppolo could complete a friggin' pass and move the chains and drain the clock. And let's say they had won. Then Mahomes would still be great, but we wouldn't be referring to him like, hey, he might end up better than Tom Brady.
Yeah, but he did win them, right?
No, I know. I'm not.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, we could do that, but he did win them.
I know. I'm painfully aware that he won them.
Yeah.
Like, I want to dislike.
He didn't even play good in the first one. That's the funny part, right? Like, if you go look at the game, he wins MVP in 19, and then the game Stafford Cooper Kupp wins MVP. Him and Stafford play almost the same game. It's just a perception of him versus Stafford, because Stafford had failures in the playoffs, or what people had written as failures, while Mahomes didn't. But
honestly, Mahomes didn't play that great in the Super Bowl last year.
I thought he played pretty great.
I think he played great.
For all the issues they had on offense coming in and the way they made it work in the playoffs, gosh, he's a level. It's hard to even put into perspective. Yeah.
They put up 3 points in the first half. They got to 6. Did they get to 6 points before the fourth quarter? Yes. Now, again, he came on strong at the end.
But this Niners team last year is one of the best teams from start to finish we've seen in NFL history in terms of their statistics on offense, defense, special teams, the way they dominated throughout the year. Like, this was a team better than 2019, better than 21, better than 23. Do you not agree with that? Or 22?
I would, but what I mean when I'm talking about Mahomes is, like, he didn't go God mode in these. They held him in check enough to beat him in both games. Like, if you had said, hey, this is what Mahomes is going to do in the game before the game had started, the Niners would be like, oh, I'll take that. Do you agree?
In the Super Bowl? Yeah, maybe. It's tough to say, because this Chiefs team, I felt like, again, was quite different from Chiefs teams that we've played in the past. And he kind of played a ball control style in that second half that you don't want. Like, even if you look at the Ravens game, like, statistically in the Ravens game, if you look at the Ravens game, would the Ravens not take how he played? But early in that game, when they put pressure on them scoring and the long drives that they had keeping the ball early in that game, he kind of played the perfect game, quote unquote, in that game. But you look back on it and it's like, it wasn't that big of a game statistically. I feel like those were the arguments people made for Brady before that too, right? Like, I remember 2 years ago, Brady threw 3 picks in the fourth quarter of an NFC championship game versus Rodgers, but it was about his ability to control and win in the right moments. If we're going to paint narratives like that for him, we got to do it for Mahomes. I
don't buy that. Like, you're telling me that implies almost like, oh, Patrick Mahomes wasn't even really trying to score. He was really more trying to.
No. I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like that at all. They didn't have the offensive capabilities to get into shootouts. That they weren't an offense capable of doing that. What I mean is they needed to win through their defense, and their offense needed to be good enough, and it wasn't good enough for a lot of the year. And he was good enough in the playoffs for them, and they won through their defense. There is a difference in that. I don't mean as he was trying not to score, not at all. They only could score so much on offense.
Right.
And he was getting them to be able to score whatever that so much was for their offense.
Right. The reality of the situation is, if Patrick Mahomes wasn't their quarterback, they don't sniff a Super Bowl.
Not even close. This Chiefs team on offense was just not very good.
Right. Unfortunately for us, the 49ers didn't draft Patrick Mahomes. He was their quarterback, and he's subsequently beaten them in 2 Super Bowls. I'm not trying to take away the greatness of Patrick Mahomes. I'm not. He's awesome. I can't believe we're sitting here legitimately discussing a player that has a chance to do what Tom Brady did, when Tom Brady had the most ridiculous and stupid career any quarterback has ever had.
Some of the luck that Brady had, I'll never believe it. But it's also like some of the unluck then he's had too. You got to take that into account as well. Either way, for me, the Mahomes thing is just it's unreal to me that, just like Brady, the Chiefs, and I never expected Andy Reid to be able to do this, they've been able to morph who they are and win all different style of games. And I thought that was a very Belichick-specific skill for the Patriots. I really did. And it doesn't seem to be, because the Chiefs have been able to do that the last few years.
Diego's YouTube channel member says, this reminiscing I'm not liking. Yeah, last week we got into Jerry Rice and the greatness of Jerry Rice. I do agree. I think that they have evolved, and the fact that they've been able to do that speaks to the great coaching. Like, they have Steve Spagnuolo there. He's the man. He's an incredible defensive coordinator. I think that there's a possibility the 49ers do that this season, Bish. I think the defense could be really good, and I think maybe the offense takes a step back, but the defense steps up to compensate for that.
So I'm not as high on the 49ers defense this year, actually.
Yeah, you and I disagree on this.
Yeah, I'm very high on the 49ers offense this year. I think that the 49ers offense is going to be pretty dominant. And I think they started already teetering in the playoffs to being more of an offensive driven team. And I feel like we are going to fully go there this year. I'm scared about the defensive line. This has been a team that's been led by their defensive line for so long. And obviously Nick Bosa is still their best player, but the lack of depth, Rob, this year, and the fact that they're coming in injured with Yetur Gross-Matos dealing with an injury as well as Leonard Floyd, I think that they're going to be an offensive team. I think their defense isn't going to take a step forward, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Warlock says Steve Wilkes played prevent defense in overtime. Thank God he's not here anymore. I think that you might be right about the defensive line, but I think the secondary compensates for that. I think the secondary is the best secondary Kyle's ever had. I think the secondary can help the defensive line where maybe they don't get the pass rush right away, but they get more coverage sacks. I really do think that. Now, the Greenlaw thing sucks because clearly that's a huge, huge loss that they're going to have to overcome because he's not going to be there for at least the first 4 games. But I really do think the secondary is really good. I like the depth.
You think you take this secondary over the secondary that they had in 22 with Jimmy Ward, Mooney Ward, Diamador Lenore, Hufanga, and Tashawn Gibson?
I don't think Jimmy Ward was that great. I really don't. He was a good, solid player. When you don't get any interceptions and make any game change,
Jimmy Ward had 4 picks that year, right?
Ooh, 4 picks. It was like it's a career worth of interceptions for Jimmy Ward. No, I'm taking this year's secondary, 100%. Mooney, Ward, and Diamador, a much better Diamador Lenore, who seems to be like the stock is up on him, and he's another guy they're going to have to pay after the year, by the way. That's a scary situation because he deserves every penny. Now, Hufanga's coming off the injury. That's fair. That's a fair criticism. I love Tig Brown. I really do. I like Renardo Green also. I think this secondary overall is deeper and better than any Kyle has ever had.
Yeah, so I'm not as convinced with the 2 safeties. Granted, we're dealing with the situation that Hufanga hasn't fully returned, so I'm looking at Tig Brown, George Odom. I'm not fully convinced in that as a safety. I agree. The Mooney Ward Lenore thing, probably as a duo, this is the best duo we've ever had under Kyle Shanahan for the 49ers coming into a season. I think that third corner spot is still a little bit up in the air, and that's just because Green is a rookie, however promising he is, and I think Yadam is probably going to be the guy that gets to play early. Anyway, given that, I guess I thought the 22 secondary was probably better, but I could be proven wrong. And then the linebackers, I think they will miss Greenlaw.
Well,
so
yeah.
I just look across the board on the defense, and I feel like there's a couple question marks at each spot that I'm not fully convinced with.
I think Bosa is going to be way better than he was last year.
That I agree.
And that's
obviously. And he was amazing last year too.
Right. I mean, I think he's going to get home more frequently. Hopefully Leonard Floyd can cause some havoc. You know, I don't know how banged up he is. He's back at practice. So, like, I mean, that's a good sign, obviously. I'm not saying he's 100%, but the fact that he was practicing so soon afterwards was hopefully leads us to believe that he's closer to 100% than not. Yetur Gross-Matos, we don't know. We have to wait and see. You know, I got excited, Vish. I was hosting on ESPN Radio a couple hours ago, and I got the first injury report of the year for the Thursday night game landed in my inbox. And I was like, oh my God, like it's a literal game week. We haven't really talked about the Jets because you and I are going to have another show before the Jets game, which we're going to do a quick pregame show, like a half-hour pregame show right before the game. So we can dive into the more stuff there. But like, it's friggin' game week, man. We got football on Thursday, on Friday, college football, which I don't really care that much about, but it's there. And then football on Sunday and Monday.
Yeah, 100%. Super exciting.
I don't know what you did to this person in the chat, Giannis, but they really don't like you.
What to do? I guess I did something, but
how are you going to sleep at night?
Huh?
How are you going to sleep at night knowing Giannis doesn't like you?
That's a great question. Honestly, I'm going to have to, I'm going to be thinking all night. Oh man, what is Giannis going to say? What is Giannis going to say? You know what though? I think Giannis does make some fair points. I will give him that. I'm standing on. I think Nick Bosa got too much criticism for how he played last year. And the one point I wanted to make about the defensive line is I think this is the least amount of support Nick Bosa has had coming into a week 1 in his career.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you
Week
mean
1.
by, like, you think Leonard Floyd's better than anybody they've had since D Ford by a lot? No, it's not close.
Amenahue was pretty good.
Amenahue, Samson
But
Abu.
but I don't look at it as, hey, just Leonard Floyd. I look at it as they had Armstead previously.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe Hargrave, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd. I'm looking at the injury too. Maybe I made too definitive statement, but
Charles Amenahue had 7 sacks last year. That was his career high. Before that, he never got above 4.5. Now, I know sacks aren't everything, but damn, Leonard Floyd's getting 9-10 a year, and he's never missing time.
yeah, he's also 32, 31.
Yeah, that's
Amenahue
fair.
at the time was 25. They had Samson Ebukam for a couple of years. He was
Samson Ebukam stinks.
I was a hater of Samson Ebukam, but I will tell you, he from the second half of 2021 had me putting my foot in my mouth because he played well from the second half of 2021.
Great. How do you do the first half?
He was good in 2022 and the second half of 2021, man. And I say that as someone who hated on him and how he played the first half of 2021.
The thing I always
he
like,
played well. He got money from the Colts because he played well.
I like that we're not asking Floyd to do anything different than he's done anywhere else. With Amenahue, with Ebukam, all the guys they tried to plug in, we were like, hey, you got to be above and beyond because you're playing on a loaded defensive line. And I get the strategy. I get the thinking, honestly. Like, I totally understand it. But I like with Floyd that it's like, hey, just do what you've always done. We're not asking you to suddenly transform into a better player because you're now in San Francisco. Just do what you've always done. And we'll see if he can.
He is playing a slightly different role, though. Floyd was, in Buffalo, he was playing in a 4-man front, but the years past when he succeeded most with the Rams, he was playing as an outside linebacker in a 3-4, which is a little bit different from what he's being asked to do, the 49ers. But again, they've talked about dropping an end and stuff like that this year. That stuff he does really well. So maybe they're not changing his role at all. Wow, I just talked a large circle in a sentence, but yeah.
Way to go. You're on my side of the argument. You just had to talk it out. I think Hargrave hopefully will be better. Javon Hargrave. I'm hopeful that he will, he said he understands the system a little better now, but he was hurt in the last half of last year. Maybe he can be better, particularly against the run. If he's better, then you have a better Bosa. You have a better complementary edge rusher in Leonard Floyd. Now, I agree. Those are all starters, right? We're not talking about depth there, and that's the scary thing. But I don't know. Maybe I'm too bullish on the Niners defense.
Yeah, I'm not as bullish on them. I'm just not as bullish on that defensive line top to bottom. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah.
We will see. We will be here with you through all of it. If this is your first time checking out a Gold Standard podcast, thank you. We appreciate it. Give us a like and a subscribe. I promise you we will earn your time. We're here we're live every single weekday. We do a 49ers in 5, which is a quick news update. 5 minutes, comes out every morning with everything you need to know about the team. It has injury reports. It has best clips from press conferences and interviews. Just give us a chance this season if you're just discovering us. Thank you. I promise you we have better 49ers coverage than anyone, frankly. I would put our coverage up against anyone. It is not PR. It is not all positive. It is not all negative. We got both. So please give us a chance, and I hope you do. Also, like and subscribe to the Vish Kumaran YouTube channel. Just search Vish Kumaran. It comes up. It will make you a better, smarter football fan. Vish, the next time we talk, the 49ers will be mere minutes from kicking off the 2024 season. Is Trent Williams signed and playing when we next speak?
I don't know about playing. I think he'll be signed.
You think he won't play?
I wonder if making them wait is that. Like, oh, you don't give me my contract in time, I'm not going to show up ready to play week 1. And I only say that because that's kind of the Jamar Chase situation that's happening, right? So maybe that's what you said with the timing. And by the way, Rob, you should not have said something about Giannis because he took that. Whatever he was driving over me, he beat me up, and then he came and drove the truck right over you to end things off. So,
I wasn't even paying attention. All right,
both of us aren't getting sleep tonight, pal.
Great. We'll be up texting each other about how traumatized we are. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your Labor Day, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back live tomorrow. Jason Aponte, Steph Sanchez for the Bully Ball podcast. Join us for that. and enjoy the rest of your night.